Armed with federal approval and shovels poised to dig into a $7.4 billion Made in Canada pipeline expansion to finally connect the Alberta oil sands to world markets, well, nervous owner Kinder Morgan has put a stop to spending until he gets reassurances the mega project will proceed unobstructed by BC politicians. Over the weekend, a frustrated Alberta Premier Rachel Notley suggested her government might invest in keeping the pipeline alive. She is standing by. But earlier today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had this to say when asked if the feds would follow suit.
We are determined to see that pipeline built. It is in the national interest. It doesn't make any sense for us to continue to have about a $15 billion discount on our oil resources because we are trapped with an American market. As for the options, we're considering a broad range of options, and we'll continue to as the days and weeks unfold.
And Jim Carr is the Federal Natural Resources Minister, which includes, unfortunately for him, pipeline projects. He joins me in the studio. Welcome to the show, Minister.
Good to be back again so soon after the last one.
You've got an emergency cabinet meeting tomorrow. Why?
We'll talk about all kinds of stuff that's important. I'm sure that we'll talk about energy and pipelines.
Is there a possibility a move could come out of tomorrow's meeting?
Well, you never prejudge what Cabinet might decide. We know that Kinder Morgan has told us that they're uncertain about completing and the successful completion of a project that's in the national interest. We keep telling Canadians why we think it's in the national interest. Jobs, market access, $1.5 billion in the Ocean Protection Plan, co-development with Indigenous peoples of monitoring, and we think that this is good for Canada and it's good for British Columbia.
But you've said repeatedly all options on the table.
Right.
And I just need to know what even one of those options would be.
I'll give you three.
Okay, give me three.
Financial, regulatory, and legal.
And what does financial look like?
Well, we'll look at the kinds of ways in which the Government of Canada can work with its partners. Its partners would be Kinder Morgan and the Government of Alberta. Pleased to work with the Government of British Columbia, who's clouding over the certainty of the project, which is making it more difficult for Kinder Morgan to ramp up spending. And we're encouraging in the strongest possible way the Government of British Columbia to understand the impact of that lack of clarity on the Canadian economy, because investor confidence is very important and they're not helping.
Okay, so Rachel Notley, who we'll be talking to after we finish chatting with you, says she'd look at investing and getting this pipeline if that's what it takes to move it forward.
Right.
Kinder Morgan said they're open to that.
Yeah.
Are you open to investing in this pipeline?
We'll look at all financial options. And we'll
not
look
ruling
at regulatory.
anything out.
We're not ruling anything out. Exactly.
When you heard about it, I don't know if you heard about it before us. I'm sure you got some advance notice. So did you try and talk Kinder Morgan out of making this statement?
I had a very good conversation with Kinder Morgan on Saturday. They explained to us why they were doing what they were doing. They didn't show us the release, but they explained the logic of the release. And there was, I understand, a long call with them this morning. They talked about the deadline and the rationale behind the deadline, which is the seasonal work that has to be done and the problem of delay. We understand the problem of delay. So they were upfront with us. We understand where they're coming from and why.
Yeah, I mean, $300 million a month once they put, shovels in the ground and go full bore. I mean, you kind of understand why they put that on hold until they get some certainty on this picture.
Well, and the Premier of British Columbia and his government could do an awful lot to help the investment climate in Canada and in British Columbia by becoming a little bit more certain.
Do you sort of wonder why, Justin Trudeau's out in Fort McMurray? You're out there with him.
Yeah, we were there.
You are standing up for the oil sands, supposedly, and yet within 24 hours they're saying, nah, we're out of this thing. We're not going to. That's sort of a vote of non-confidence on the Prime Minister, isn't it?
No, it's not a vote of non-confidence in our government. It's a vote of anxiety over uncertainty. And the uncertainty comes from the ways in which, by indirection, the Government of British Columbia is saying, well, we may frame a question to a court. What question? What court? They haven't said. So this results in delay. And we say that we understand the consequences of delay, and we will work tirelessly with the Government of Alberta and with the proponent, and one would hope, even the Government of British Columbia, to find a way through.
Are you worried we're entering into constitutional crisis waters here, and this could be a national unity issue? Do you worry about that?
I don't see it as a crisis. I think I see it as a way in which the Government of Canada bears down on solutions that are available. We understand how things have changed over the last 48 hours, and we look to work constructively to get through it. We also know this, that the job of the government of Alberta is to speak on behalf of the people of Alberta as they see its interests. And the same thing is true in British Columbia. There's only one government of Canada. We appeal to Canadians to understand why this is in the national interest, and we will hear more and more voices who will be in support of this project. The workers who are affected by the possibility of delays and cancellation. Indigenous communities who have signed agreements with Kinder Morgan. The clean tech executives who wrote to the Premier last week saying this project is in the interest of Canada. You will hear more and more voices.
Oh, BC Business Council is quite emphatic. This has to go ahead.
They
That's
are, and
BC.
others are too.
And I guess last time you were on the show, you said this pipeline will be built within 3 years.
Yeah.
Is that still on?
I'm confident. I'm confident because I believe most Canadians believe it's good for Canada for all of the reasons that I've expressed, and it's good for British Columbia too.
You know what people don't understand, and I actually was quite surprised, is that there's over 40 First Nations in BC that support this pipeline.
Yes,
the
there
homework's been done.
Yes, and there was historic consultation with Indigenous communities. We learned the lesson of the failed Northern Gateway pipeline. And what the court said was it wasn't a problem with Enbridge or a problem with the National Energy Board. It was the Harper government who didn't consult properly. So when we looked at TMX, we said it wouldn't make an awful lot of sense to repeat that mistake. So we added considerably more breadth and depth to the process.
All right, tomorrow we can have you back on the show after that cabinet meeting.
Go Jets, go.
That's not an answer, Minister, but I'll take that as a hometown boy cheering on a hockey team. All right.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us.